"Sign it, Mom, or you don't stay here anymore." For a second, I thought I heard him wrong. Ryan didn't even wait for an answer. No anger, no hesitation, just final. That was the first thing that felt wrong. It was Christmas morning. The kitchen should have been noisy. Plates, voices, something warm filling the space. Instead, no one was speaking. Vanessa leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me like she was waiting for something she already understood. Chloe stood near the doorway, frozen, her phone still in her hand. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at him either. Her fingers tightened around her phone like she wanted to say something and chose not to. I hadn't even heard a Merry Christmas. My hand paused halfway to the envelope on the table. My name was printed across it. Clean, official, out of place next to the tray of cinnamon rolls I had just taken out of the oven. The smell of sugar still hung in the air, soft and familiar, like it belonged to a different morning. I didn't pick it up right away. Ryan didn't rush me. That calm, it wasn't new. I had seen it before, in conversations that ended a little too quickly. In documents, he would flip straight to the last page, tapping the signature line before I had time to read. I had told myself it didn't matter, that it was easier to trust him than to slow everything down. Now he just stood there, watching, waiting. I slid my finger under the flap and opened the envelope. Paper, thick, formal. My eyes dropped to the first line. Eviction notice. For a second, nothing moved. Not the air, not the sound in the room. Even the clock on the wall felt quieter, like it was trying not to interrupt. From my own house. I didn't feel shocked right away, just displaced in a way I couldn't explain yet. Chloe shifted. Just a small movement. Her shoe against the floor. But it was enough to break the silence for half a second before it fell back again. Vanessa didn't react. Not surprise, not concern, just stillness. Like this had been expected. I lowered the paper slowly, but I didn't look away from it. Ryan stepped a little closer, not enough to touch, just enough to make sure I could hear him clearly. "It doesn't have to be difficult," he said. The words were soft. The tone wasn't. There was no apology in it. No doubt. Just control. And suddenly something in me shifted, not loudly, not all at once. Just enough to make one thought clear. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something he had just decided this morning. And the worst part? This wasn't the first time something felt off. I placed the paper flat on the table, smoothing it with my palm like it might change if I touched it carefully enough. "I see," I said. My voice stayed steady. That surprised me more than anything else. I noticed small things instead. The edge of the counter pressing into my fingers, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the way Ryan didn't blink when I spoke, like he was measuring my reaction against something he'd already planned for. Vanessa shifted her weight. Subtle. Controlled. Her eyes moved from Ryan to me and back again. No one stepped in. No one said, "This isn't right." That silence said more than anything else in the room. Ryan gave a small nod. Not relief. Confirmation. Like this was just the part where I caught up to what he already knew, and in that moment, I understood something else. He thought this was over, that all I would do now was react. What he didn't understand, what none of them seemed to understand yet, was that I wasn't going to give them that. Not here. Not like this. But I wasn't walking away either. Not from this house. Not from what it meant. My name is Irene Palmer. I'm 77 years old, And I was standing in the kitchen my husband and I built together, holding a document that said I no longer belonged in it. If someone in your own family ever made a decision about your life without you, you already know how that feels. Tell me where you're watching from, and if something like this ever happened in your family, I want to hear it. Stay with me, because this didn't end the way they thought it would. I picked the paper up again. This time, I didn't rush. Eviction notice. Filed, processed, dates already stamped in place, like someone had moved forward step by step without ever needing me to agree. My eyes slowed, not scanning, looking. There were addresses, legal references, language about ownership. Ownership. That word didn't sit where it should. And that was the first moment I realized this didn't start today. It wasn't the first time he'd asked me to sign something quickly. I had signed papers before, insurance forms, bank documents, things Ryan had brought over, usually in a hurry. He would flip straight to the last page, tapping the signature line before I had time to read. I never stopped him. I never asked to read everything twice, because he was my son. Behind me, the kettle gave a soft click as it cooled. I set the paper down again, this time more deliberately. My fingers stayed on it for a moment, pressing lightly against the surface. The document was real, but something inside it wasn't lining up. Ryan shifted again, just slightly. Impatience, now harder to hide. Vanessa's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened, watching for something, a reaction, a mistake. I didn't give them either, because beneath the shock, beneath the confusion, something else had started to form. A question. And that question didn't point to today. It pointed backward. To conversations I hadn't questioned, to moments that felt rushed, to things I had signed because it was easier not to slow everything down. I folded the notice once, clean, precise, not accepting it, just holding it together. Then I placed my hand over it and looked at the table instead of at them. "Give me a little time," I said. Ryan inhaled like he was about to argue. Then he didn't. Vanessa didn't move. Chloe finally looked at me, but only for a second. No one pushed. No one challenged me. And that was the second thing that felt wrong. I turned toward the sink and let the water run for a moment before shutting it off again. I needed something to move, even if it was just that. Behind me, I could feel them still watching, waiting. Let them. Because whatever this was, it hadn't started today. And if I looked closely enough, I was going to find exactly where it began. I left the sink dry and quiet behind me and went back to the table. The paper was still where I had placed it. Flat, neat, as if it belonged there. It didn't. I pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. The sound of wood against tile carried farther than it should have. No one spoke. I didn't look at them. Not yet. I picked the notice up again. This time I read it the way I should have read every document Ryan had ever handed me, line by line. The language didn't shout. It didn't need to. It was built to sound ordinary if you moved too quickly. Phrases stacked together, references to codes and filings, names of offices that felt official enough to pass without question. I slowed down. There was my address. Then another line, ownership status. That word. Again. Ownership. My fingers pressed slightly harder into the paper. I read it twice. It didn't say I was staying. It didn't say I was living here. It said something had already been decided about who owned it. A small shift in wording. Easy to miss. Easier to ignore if you trusted the person who brought it to you. I set the paper down and turned the envelope over in my hands. The return address was printed neatly in the corner. A legal office in downtown Seattle. Not one I had ever contacted. Not one I had ever needed. My thumb traced the edge. Ryan had arranged this. Not just now, not this morning. This had started before I ever opened that envelope. I leaned back slightly in the chair, my eyes settling on the table, but not really seeing it anymore. Because I remembered. A Tuesday afternoon, bright light through the kitchen window, too sharp against the table. Ryan standing instead of sitting, already talking, before I had even picked up the first page. Just some refinancing paperwork, he had said, placing the stack in front of me. It'll make things easier. Easier. I could hear it again now, clearer than it had been then. He flipped through the pages quickly, stopping at the last one. Tap, right where I needed to sign. His pen was already in his hand. Just here, he said. I had looked down, but not long enough. The text felt dense, unnecessary. Too much to sort through in the moment. Mom, I've got to run in a few minutes. Not pressure, not exactly. Just enough to make me move faster. I signed. He didn't wait for me to finish reading. The next page was already halfway turned before I'd fully lifted my pen. Just this one, too, he said, almost casually. Not rushed, not urgent, just moving things along. I remember the way he stood instead of sitting, like he was already on his way out. One hand near his keys, the other holding the papers steady so I wouldn't need to. The pages didn't stay still long enough to invite questions. Every time my eyes slowed, he gave me the next place to look. Another line. Another signature. Simple. Temporary. That was how it felt in the moment. Nothing that required a second look. Nothing that needed to be held on to. By the time I thought about asking for a copy, he had already gathered everything into a neat stack. "I'll take care of the rest," he said, and he was already moving toward the door. Then there was another page. He gathered them before I could think to stop him. Neatly, efficiently, like he had done it before. I had let him go. I hadn't asked for copies. I hadn't asked questions, because he was my son. The memory didn't feel distant anymore. It felt connected. The signature was mine, but the page didn't look the way I remembered. I looked back down at the notice in my hands. Ownership. My grip tightened slightly. If that paperwork was what he said it was, then why was this word here? I glanced up. Ryan was watching me. Not nervously, not uncertain. Waiting. Like he knew exactly which part I had reached. "Where did this come from?" I asked. My voice stayed even. Ryan didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked, quick, almost unnoticeable, toward Vanessa, then back to me. "It's already been handled," he said. Handled. That word didn't belong here either. That's not what I asked. My hand stayed on the paper, keeping it still between us. He exhaled slightly, adjusting, not reacting. "It's part of the paperwork you signed," he said. Simple. Too simple. My fingers pressed more firmly into the page. "What paperwork?" Ryan tilted his head just a fraction, like the question itself didn't make sense. "The refinancing," he said. "A while back. A while back." The Tuesday afternoon slid back into place. The sunlight, the pages, the pen already in his hand. My chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. "I remember signing forms," I said. "That's not the same thing." Vanessa shifted slightly behind him. A quiet exhale, almost a laugh she didn't fully release. Chloe moved near the doorway, just enough to remind me she was still there. Ryan didn't look at them. "It's all connected, Mom," he said. It was explained. No, it wasn't. Not in a way that mattered. I lowered my eyes to the paper again, letting the silence stretch. If what he was saying was true, then this notice wasn't the beginning. It was the result, and whatever I had signed was part of it. A cold realization settled in, slow and steady. He hadn't needed me to understand it. He had just needed me to sign. I folded the notice once, carefully aligning the edges, not accepting it, just containing it. My mind moved through the details I hadn't checked, the lines I hadn't read, the moments I had chosen trust over attention, because it was easier, because it was him. I placed the folded paper on the table and rested my hand lightly over it. Something still didn't fit. Not completely. If that paperwork had been what he said, then this outcome should have made sense. It didn't. Not yet. And that meant one of two things. Either I had misunderstood what I signed, or I had never been told the truth about it. I drew in a slow breath, keeping my expression still. "All right," I said quietly. Not agreement, not acceptance, just a pause. Because I wasn't going to react to this the way they expected. Not until I knew exactly what had been done, and I wasn't there yet, but I was close. All right. The word didn't mean agreement, it meant I was done reacting. Ryan didn't move. Vanessa didn't move. Chloe shifted near the doorway, but still didn't say anything. Good, let them think I needed time to process. I lowered my hand from the folded notice and reached for the envelope again. The paper inside wasn't enough. Not yet. It told me something had already happened, but not how. And I needed the how. I stood up and walked toward the hallway without looking at them. My steps were steady. I knew exactly where I was going. The study, a small room just past the living area. Shelves, a desk, a filing cabinet I had kept organized for years, bills, insurance, tax returns, everything labeled, everything in place. If I had signed something that led to this, it would be here, or it should be. If the answer existed anywhere, it was in that room. I pulled the drawer open, folders lined up neatly, my handwriting across each tab. Mortgage, insurance, bank, systems I trusted, systems I had built. My fingers moved faster now, not careless, focused. I took all 3 folders and placed them on the desk, then sat down. The room felt different from the kitchen. Quieter, clearer, like I could finally hear my own thoughts again. I opened the mortgage folder first. Statements, payment history, nothing unusual, no sudden changes, no mention of ownership shifts. I set it aside. Insurance, next. Policy updates, coverage adjustments, renewal notices, routine, expected, nothing that led to an eviction notice. My jaw tightened. Then I reached for the last folder, bank. The papers inside were newer, less uniform. Some printed, some clipped together. A few I didn't recognize immediately. I pulled one out. Refinancing. The word sat at the top of the page. My fingers paused for half a second. Then I turned the page. There it was. The layout hit me first. Not the words, the structure. Multiple pages, dense paragraphs, legal language layered on top of itself, and at the bottom, signature lines. I flipped forward. Another page. Then again. And there it was. My name. My signature. Clear. Unmistakable. I had signed this. But this wasn't what I remembered. I flipped back, then forward again. Something didn't match. When Ryan brought these to me, it had felt simple. Quick, 1 page at a time. Sign here, sign there, done. This was not simple. This was built. I leaned in, my eyes moving slower now. Paragraphs linked to other paragraphs, clauses referencing conditions that weren't explained in the moment, sections that only made sense if you read everything together, which I hadn't. I stopped at 1 page, shorter than the others, easy to skip. My eyes moved across it once, then again, and that's when it hit. The wording shifted. Not about payments, not about interest, about authority, about rights granted under specific conditions, about actions that could be taken, without requiring anything further. My hand stilled on the page. A quiet, sharp realization settled in. This wasn't just paperwork. This was permission, and it didn't need me anymore. Not obvious, not direct, but buried. Placed where it could be missed if you were moving too quickly. And I had been moving quickly. Because he made sure I did. I sat back slowly, the paper still in my hand. Ryan hadn't needed me to understand this. He had needed me to sign it. That was enough. I looked down at my signature again. Clean, deliberate, real. That was the key. That was what made everything else possible. I set the page down and pulled another from the stack, scanning for anything that confirmed it outright. But there wasn't a single line that said it clearly. Not one sentence I could point to and say, there, this is where it happened. Instead, it was spread out, layered, built across multiple sections so no single page carried the full weight of it. That wasn't an accident. That was design. He knew exactly where I wouldn't look. My jaw tightened, because now I understood something else. This hadn't just been rushed. It had been controlled. Every step, every page, every moment where I could have slowed down. He had made sure I didn't. I gathered the papers into a stack and aligned them against the desk. Neat again, contained, but not harmless. I stared at the top page, my mind moving through the pieces I had missed. The language, the structure, the way it all connected only after the fact. This wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't doubt. Something had been done. Carefully. Intentionally. And I was close to seeing it clearly. But not completely. Not yet. There was still one piece missing. One place where all of this would connect to something real. Something measurable. Something that couldn't be hidden behind wording. I rested my hand lightly on the stack of papers and drew in a slow breath. I knew where that answer was, and it wasn't in these papers. I just hadn't gone there yet. I stayed in the study for a moment longer, my hand resting on the stack of papers. Not here. The answer wasn't here. I slid the documents back into the folder, aligning the edges carefully. No point leaving anything out of place. Not yet. Then I stood up. The house felt different as I stepped into the hallway. Not unfamiliar, but no longer steady. Like something underneath it had shifted just enough to be felt. Voices drifted from the kitchen. Low. Controlled. They stopped the second my steps carried closer. Of course they did. I didn't go back in. Instead, I turned toward the small table by the window where the landline still sat. I hadn't used it much in years, but I kept it active. Out of habit, out of caution. My hand hovered over it. Then I picked it up. If the paperwork didn't say it clearly, the accounts would. Numbers didn't blur the way language did. I dialed the bank. 1 ring. 2. Chase Bank, this is Melissa. How can I help you today? I need to review activity on my account, I said. Recent transfers. Of course, Ms. Palmer, I'll just verify your information. I answered each question without hesitation. A short pause. Typing. All right, she said. What would you like me to check? Outgoing transfers. Anything recurring. Another pause. Longer this time. It wasn't one large withdrawal. It was smaller amounts, regular enough to go unnoticed. I'm seeing monthly transfers, she said. My fingers tightened slightly around the receiver. How long? About 11 months. 11. Not recent. A pattern. What amounts? Between $4,500 and just over $6,000 each month. I didn't move. Not a mistake. Not a one-time decision. What account are they going to? A linked account under your profile, she said. Authorized access. Authorized. The word settled heavier than anything else. Whose name? A brief pause. Ryan Palmer. For a moment, I didn't say anything. The name didn't feel unfamiliar. That wasn't the problem. It felt placed, like it had been sitting there for months, waiting for me to notice it. My fingers tightened slightly around the receiver, not enough to shake, just enough to remind me I was still holding it. In the background, I could hear a faint hum on the line. Someone typing. A distant voice from another call. Ordinary sounds. They didn't match what I was looking at. I lowered my eyes, focusing on the edge of the table instead of the words I had just heard. Ryan Palmer. Not a mistake. Not a misunderstanding. A name that had been moving quietly through everything I hadn't checked. I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice level before speaking again. That was the moment it stopped feeling like confusion and started feeling deliberate, not a mistake. My grip on the receiver steadied. When was he added? Approximately 1 year ago. A year, before the paperwork, or right alongside it. Labels on those transfers? Typing again. Some are marked property expenses, others have no notes. Property, not mine, if the notice was real. Any irregular activity flagged? I asked. No, she said. All transfers were completed with authorized credentials. Of course they were. That was the point. Has the pattern changed recently? No. It's been consistent. Consistent. That word left no space for doubt. This hadn't started with the notice. This had been happening quietly, month after month, while I believed everything was stable. I shifted the phone slightly against my ear. Send me the full transaction history, I said. Email or mail? Email. Done. You should receive it shortly. Thank you. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? I paused. There was more to ask, more to confirm, but not yet. No, I said. That's all. Thank you for calling Chase. Have a good day. The line went still. I lowered the receiver and placed it back gently. For a moment, I didn't move. I just stood there, my hand resting against the edge of the table. 11 months, $4,000 to $6,000, every month. Too clean to be accidental. Authorized. His name. The pieces didn't scatter anymore. They aligned. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't suspicion. This was structure. A system built quietly, maintained carefully, and it ran without interruption because I had given it permission to. A cold, steady realization settled in. This wasn't just about the house. This was about control, financial, legal, step by step. And I had been inside it the entire time without seeing it clearly. Until now. From the kitchen, a chair shifted. A voice started, then stopped. They were still waiting, still expecting something, a reaction, a mistake. I straightened slightly, my shoulders settling into place. Not yet. I wasn't ready to speak to Ryan, not until I understood all of it. Because now I wasn't just reacting. I was building something back, piece by piece. And I knew exactly what came next. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. And it wasn't going to stay quiet. I stayed by the table a moment longer, letting the numbers settle into something solid. 11 months, $4,000 to $6,000, every month. Too clean to be accidental. From the kitchen, a chair scraped, then footsteps, measured. Familiar. I didn't turn right away. He thought I was still trying to understand. I wasn't. Mom. Ryan's voice was closer now, controlled, like before, like he already knew how this would go. I turned slowly. He stood just inside the living room, one hand in his pocket. Vanessa behind him. Chloe farther back, half in the doorway. No one spoke. "I was wondering how long you'd take," Ryan said. Not concern. Timing. I held his gaze. "I called the bank." A flicker. Gone quickly. "And?" he asked. 11 months, I said. 4 to 6,000. Every month. Silence. Vanessa shifted slightly. Chloe looked down. Ryan exhaled once. "That's what this is about?" Dismissal. I didn't move. "It's not about anything," I said quietly. "It's happening." He tilted his head. "It was authorized," he said. "You approved it. Simple. Clean. Designed to end it." "I signed paperwork," I said. "That's not the same thing." Ryan gave a small shake of his head. He didn't raise his voice. He just kept correcting me. "You're overthinking it," he said. "It's restructuring. Managing assets." "My account," I said. "Our situation," he corrected. That word landed heavier than the rest. "Our." I watched him. "This didn't start this week," I said. No answer. "It didn't start with the notice." A flicker again. "There." Ryan shifted slightly. "You signed the documents," he said. "Everything follows from that." "I saw them," I said. A pause. Small. Real. "The refinancing documents," I added. "All of them." Vanessa's eyes moved to him. He didn't look back. "That's exactly what I told you," he said quickly. "It's standard." "No." The word stayed calm. "It's not standard." His jaw tightened. "You're reading into things that aren't there," he said. "Those are legal documents." "Complicated isn't the same as hidden." His eyes sharpened. "There's nothing hidden." "Then why was it built that way?" Silence. Thin now. Sharp. Vanessa unfolded her arms. Ryan straightened. "It protects the assets," he said. "It makes things efficient." "That's what the transfers are?" I asked. "Expenses," he said. "Property related." "Not my property?" The words landed clean. He didn't flinch. "It benefits all of us," he said. "You, me, everyone." Everyone, except I hadn't known I was included. I took a slow breath. "You've been moving money out of my account for almost a year," I said, without explaining what it actually was. "I did explain it," he said, sharper now. "You just didn't pay attention." There it was. The shift. Blame. Chloe looked up. Vanessa stayed still. I didn't react. "I listened," I said. "You didn't tell the truth." Ryan let out a short breath. "This is what I was trying to avoid," he said. "You're turning it into something it's not." "What is it then?" "It's management," he said. "Planning ahead. You don't want to deal with this at your age." At your age. There it was. Wrapped as concern, used as control. "I was managing just fine," I said. Ryan shook his head. "No," he said. "You weren't. That's why I stepped in." Stepped in. Not asked. Not discussed. Decided. I looked at him for a long second. "I didn't ask you to." He met my eyes. "You needed me to." And that was it. Not confusion, not misunderstanding. He believed it. All of it. "You didn't help me," I said quietly. A pause. "You used me." The words didn't rise. They didn't need to. Ryan's expression held, but something underneath it shifted. Just slightly. I didn't move. I didn't say anything else. If you were standing there hearing that, would you confront him right then or walk away and wait? Tell me what you do and stay with me, because what I did next changed everything. Ryan watched me, waiting for more, for anger, for something he could push back against. I didn't give it to him. I let the silence sit between us. Heavy now, controlled. And then I stepped back, not away from him, away from the moment he thought he understood, and that was where it shifted. I didn't say anything else after that. "You used me." The words stayed in the room long enough to matter. Ryan didn't answer. He didn't deny it. He just watched me, waiting for something louder. I didn't give it to him. I turned and walked out. Not fast, not slow, just done. No one stopped me. That told me everything I needed to know. Outside, the cold air hit sharper than I expected. It cleared my head almost instantly. I got into the car and sat there for a second, hands resting lightly on the wheel. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was confirming. I drove downtown. The office building was quiet, glass and steel, the kind of place where things were handled cleanly or not at all. I checked in, gave my name, and followed the receptionist down a short hallway. "Miss Palmer," she said softly, "they're ready for you." Of course they were. The room was simple. Table, 2 chairs, a folder already placed on one side. A man stood as I walked in. "Daniel Brooks," he said, mid-50s, calm, direct. We shook hands. "Please," he said. I sat. He didn't waste time. "I reviewed what you sent," he said. "Good. And?" I asked. He studied me for a second. "What were you told when you signed?" he asked. "That it was refinancing," I said, "to make things easier." A small nod. "That's how this is usually presented." Usually. I didn't react. "What is it actually?" I asked. He didn't rush me. He just turned the page and let me read it again. He opened the folder and turned it slightly toward me. "It's layered," he said. "Built, so no single page explains the whole thing." That matched what I had seen. "Look for control," he added. "Not wording. Control, not terms." My eyes dropped to the page. "Certain clauses activate rights," he said. "Access, decision-making, movement of assets." "Without asking again?" I asked. A pause. "Yes." There it was, clear, cold. He didn't soften it. "He had the legal ability to move your money," Daniel said, "because you signed for it." That was the moment. Not confusion, not suspicion. Fact. I didn't look away. "Was it legal?" I asked. "It can be," he said, "if it was done correctly." "If." He held my gaze. "If you understood what you were signing," he added. I didn't hesitate. "I didn't." He nodded once. "Then that matters." Simple. No reassurance, just ground to stand on. I leaned back slightly. "He's been transferring money for almost a year," I said. 4,000 to 6,000 a month. "I saw the pattern," Daniel said. "It's consistent. Marked as property expenses. That fits the structure," he said. "Fits, not proves." "Does that make it valid?" I asked. "Not by itself," he said. "A shift, small, important. What matters is intent," he continued, "and whether you were misled. Misled, not careless, not forgetful, misled." I let that settle. "He didn't explain it," I said. "He moved me through it." Daniel didn't interrupt. "That matters," he said. Again, simple, clear. I looked down at the documents, the same pages, but they didn't feel the same anymore. Before, they were confusing. Now, they were precise, built, directed. "This wasn't rushed," I said quietly. "No," Daniel said, "it was controlled. Every step, every page, every moment I didn't stop." I exhaled slowly. "What can be done?" I asked. He closed the folder. "More than you think," he said. "Not comfort. Direction. We need to secure your position first," he added. "Then we address what's already been done. Secure, then act. Order mattered." "And the money?" I asked. "We can pursue it," he said. "But only if we build this correctly." Build, not react. I nodded once. For the first time, everything aligned in a way that felt usable, not overwhelming, structured, like the system he built, but in reverse. I wasn't trying to understand it anymore. I was preparing to stop it. I rested my hand on the table. Steady. What do you need from me? I asked. Daniel met my eyes. Clarity, he said, and control. Control. That word again. But this time it wasn't his. It was mine. I stood up. Not abruptly, just ready. The folder stayed on the table, but it didn't feel like something I was trapped inside anymore. It felt like something I could answer. I turned toward the door, and for the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting to what he had done. I was deciding what happened next. I stepped out of the building and paused for a second as the doors closed behind me. Ryan didn't stop me when I left. That stayed with me. The air felt clearer, not lighter, just defined. Clarity and control. Daniel's words stayed with me as I walked to the car. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. I sat behind the wheel, my phone already in my hand before I realized it. There was one person I needed to talk to. Not Ryan, Chloe. I hesitated for a second, then I called. It rang longer than I expected. Hello? Her voice was quieter than usual. Chloe, I said, are you somewhere you can talk? A pause. I'm outside, she said. Why? Good. I need you to be honest with me, I said. Another pause. Okay. You knew about the transfers. Silence. Not confusion, not surprise. Silence. That told me enough. How much? I asked. I didn't know everything, she said quickly. I just knew he was handling things. Handling. The same word. What does that mean? I asked. He said it was easier if he managed everything, she said. The accounts. The house. Managed. Always framed as help. Did you see the documents? No. Did you ask? A beat. He always had an answer, she said, like I was the one making it complicated. I leaned back slightly. That sounded familiar. What about the money? I asked. Did you know how much? No, she said. I just knew he was moving it. Moving. Around, never taking. I let a second pass. Did you think it was mine to give? I asked. Silence again, heavier this time. I didn't think about it like that, she said, honest. Too late. That's the problem, I said. Another pause. I thought he was helping you, she added. Helping. I didn't react to the word. He had the legal ability to do it, I said. That doesn't make it right. A breath on her end. I didn't know that. I know. And I did. Because now I could hear the difference. Not manipulation. Not strategy. Just someone who had stopped questioning something that didn't feel urgent. Until now. Where are you? I asked. Down the street, she said. I didn't want to stay in the house. Good. What are you going to do? She asked. The question came carefully, like she already knew the answer might matter. I'm going to stop it, I said. No explanation, no hesitation. A pause. Okay. That was new. No defense, no confusion. Just acceptance. Chloe, I said, this is going to get complicated. I figured. And when it does, I need to know where you stand. The line settled between us. Clear, simple. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm not with him, she said. She didn't defend him. She just stopped answering when I said his name. The words came slower, but steadier. I never really was. I just didn't question it. There it was. Not betrayal. Silence. And silence becomes permission. I'm asking you to question it now, I said. I am, she said. I am. This time I believed her. Not because of the words, because of the space between them. Something had shifted. Not completely, but enough. Then don't talk to Ryan about this, I said. Why? Because he thinks he still has control, I said. I'm not giving him time to adjust. A pause. Okay. No argument. That mattered. I lowered the phone slightly, then stopped. Chloe. Yeah? This isn't going to look like a conversation. A breath. What does that mean? It means when this happens, I said, it's not going to be quiet. Silence. Then, okay. Not hesitation. Understanding. That was the moment. This isn't right, she said quietly. There it was, the line, clear, final. I didn't answer, I didn't need to. I should have asked more questions, she added. Yes, I said. No softness, no blame, just truth. The space between us felt different now. Not distant, not close, clear. I'll call you later, I said. Okay. The line ended. I sat there for a moment, the phone still in my hand. That was one shift. Not the whole structure, but enough to crack it. Chloe wasn't standing with him, and that changed the balance. Not publicly, not yet. But inside the family, it had already split, not loudly, not all at once, but in a way that doesn't go back. I started the car. The engine turned over smoothly. Everything still looked the same. The house, the street, the routine. But it wasn't, because now, when this came forward, he wouldn't be standing on solid ground, and neither would anyone who stayed silent. I pulled into traffic, my mind already moving ahead. This wasn't the moment to confront him fully. That would come next. And when it did, it wouldn't be something he could explain away. Not this time. I didn't go back to the house right away. I drove past it once. Slow. Just enough to see the lights still on, shadows moving behind the curtains. Then I kept going. Not to leave, just to think. When I came back, the street was quiet. The house looked the same. It wasn't. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat there for a second. No hesitation, just timing. Then I went inside. Ryan was already in the living room, Vanessa beside him, Chloe near the edge of the room, not with them, not with me. All three looked up. No one interrupted, but no one stood next to him either. No one spoke. Good. I closed the door behind me. I want to talk. Ryan nodded. Then let's talk. I didn't sit. I spoke to the bank, I said. No reaction. I spoke to a lawyer. That landed. Small, but real. Vanessa glanced at him. Chloe stayed still. Ryan held my gaze. And, he said, you had access to my accounts for almost a year, I said. You moved money every month. It was authorized, he said. I know. That stopped him. Just for a second. I signed the documents. I continued. That part is clear. Then I don't see the problem, he said. You do. Quiet. Flat. He shifted slightly. This wasn't explained, I said. It was built. No answer. It was structured so I wouldn't see it. That's your interpretation, he said. No. Silence. Thin now. Sharp. What did your lawyer say? He asked. Careful, trying to regain control. That you had the legal ability to do it, I said. He didn't deny it. But that doesn't make it right. Vanessa's arms dropped. Chloe didn't move. Ryan exhaled. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said. Everything I did was to protect us. Us? I let the word sit. This wasn't shared, I said. It was taken. His expression tightened. That's not fair. I'm not talking about fair. I held his gaze. I'm talking about what happens now. That shifted something. Ryan straightened. Vanessa went still. Chloe looked up. I'm stopping all access to my accounts, I said. Effective now. Ryan reacted immediately. That's not necessary, he said. We can adjust this without... No. One word, final, the first time I cut him off. Silence. He wasn't expecting that. I'm reviewing every document, I continued, with legal oversight. Vanessa stepped back slightly. Ryan's control started to crack. You're escalating this, he said. There's no reason to. This is already escalated. Quiet. Controlled. He shook his head. You don't understand how complicated this is. I understand enough. That landed. Hard. He stepped forward. Do you realize what you're risking? He said. If you undo this. I do. I didn't let him finish. And I'm choosing it. Another step. Closer now. This affects all of us. It already has. He stopped. For the first time, he had nothing ready. The silence stretched, broken. He ran a hand through his hair. That's not how this works, he said, sharper now. You can't just tear everything down because I see it now? He didn't answer. That's exactly when it changes. His control snapped. Not loudly, but enough. This is why I had to step in, he said. You don't think long term, you react. The words came faster now, less measured. I built this so things wouldn't fall apart, he continued, and now you're tearing it down because you don't like it. Vanessa didn't speak. Chloe stayed still. I didn't match his pace. I let him finish. Then I answered, You didn't build this for me. A pause. You built it for control. That landed. He stared at me. For a second, nothing. Then anger. You're making a mistake, he said. Maybe, but not the one he thought. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because the line had already been crossed. I took a step forward. Not aggressive, not emotional, just clear. This stops now, I said. The room went still. You don't get to decide this anymore. No one spoke. Not Ryan. Not Vanessa. Not Chloe. And for the first time, he didn't have anything left to say. Not this time. The house was quiet after that. Not calm, just quieter than before. Ryan didn't try to continue the conversation. That told me enough. The next few days moved differently. Not faster. More precise. Every document went through Daniel. Every account was reviewed. Every line that had once been unclear was now examined for what it actually did, not what it sounded like. I didn't rush anything. That mattered, because this wasn't about reacting anymore. It was about building something that couldn't be undone the same way. Daniel called 2 days later. We're ready to move forward, he said. Simple, direct. With what? I asked. A formal challenge, he said, on the basis of misrepresentation and misuse of authorized control. The words were technical, the meaning wasn't. We're not arguing that the documents exist, he added. We're arguing how they were used. That was the difference. I let that settle. And the transfers? I asked. They're part of the pattern, he said. They support the intent. Intent. That word again. Quiet, but decisive. What do you need from me? I asked. Consistency, he said. And clarity. I nodded. I have both. And for the first time, I knew that was true. Ryan changed after that. Not immediately, but noticeably. He stopped explaining things, stopped trying to reframe them. The confidence he had held before, tight, controlled, started to thin. He still moved through the house like he belonged there. But it didn't land the same way. Not anymore. Because now everything he did felt observed, measured. Not by emotion, by structure. Vanessa said less, stayed closer to the edges of the room, watched more than she spoke, and Chloe didn't stay in the room when he did. That was new. It wasn't loud. It wasn't confrontation, but it was clear. The space around him had changed, and he felt it. One evening, he stopped me in the hallway. You're actually going through with this, he said. Not a question. I looked at him. Yes. A pause. You don't have to, he said. We can still fix this. Fix? The word didn't carry the same meaning anymore. This is how I fix it, I said. He exhaled slowly. "This doesn't end cleanly," he said. "I'm not looking for clean." That stopped him. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "No," I said. "I'm making it clear." Silence. He looked at me differently now. Not like before, like someone he couldn't move. "You're going to regret this," he said. Maybe, but not for the reasons he thought. I didn't answer. I walked past him, and this time, he didn't follow. It wasn't one decision, it was a series of them, each one easier than the last. The paperwork moved quickly after that. Not rushed, just inevitable. Daniel handled most of it. Filings, responses, requests for documentation Ryan hadn't expected to produce. That part mattered, because once something becomes formal, it stops being something you can talk around. It becomes something you have to answer. And answers don't negotiate. Ryan started asking questions. Not to me, to his own attorney. I could hear it in his voice. Shorter, sharper, less certain. He wasn't explaining anymore. He was trying to understand. That told me everything. Clarity doesn't make things easier, it just makes them honest. Chloe stayed out of it, but she stayed near. That mattered too. One night she sat across from me at the table, quiet for a long time before speaking. "He didn't think you'd do this," she said. "I know." A pause. "He still thinks it'll work out." I held her gaze. "It won't." Not emotional, just true. She nodded slowly. "I see that now." We didn't say anything else. We didn't need to. By the time the court date was set, everything had shifted. Not on the surface. The house still stood. The routines still existed. But underneath, nothing was the same. Ryan spoke less. Vanessa avoided eye contact. Chloe stayed neutral, but not distant. And me, I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't reacting. I wasn't questioning. I was ready. Because whatever happened next, it wouldn't be decided in a conversation. It would be decided somewhere he couldn't control. And for the first time, neither would I. If you were in my place, would you have trusted him? Or questioned everything sooner? Tell me what you think. And if this story stayed with you, take a second to like it. Share it with someone who would understand and follow for more stories like this.